Let me ask you a question. What do you think will happen if you have a colony that has a majority population of slaves that are being overworked in horrible conditions, while at the same time in the mother country, you're passing laws and legislations that advocate equal rights for all, no matter the background? Well, you'd think there might be a rebellion, and that's exactly what we're talking about today in Vlogs of History, so let's get to it. We're talking about the Haitian Revolution. Now, the Haitian Revolution was one for the books. It is in fact the only colonial revolution to have successfully abolished slavery and gained its independence from the mother country. Now, who was the mother country in this case? Well, it was France. In the late 1700s, Haiti, or Saint-Domingue as it was called at the time, was a French colony. But it wasn't just any French colony, it was France's most profitable colony because of sugar and coffee. At its peak, Haiti was exporting 60% of the world's supply of coffee and 40% of the world's supply of sugar, so it's safe to say that it was a very profitable colony. On the island, you had a mix of three groups. You had the whites, you had the free blacks, and you had the black slaves. The whites were obviously the rich ones who owned the plantations and the shops. The free blacks were former slaves who managed to get their independence one way or another, and the rest of the population was black slaves. 95% of the population was black slaves. Now, you may think being a slave and working in a sugar plantation in Haiti may not be that bad. Well, I'm here to tell you that it was worse. It was the opposite. It was horrible. You had a mortality rate so high that it was higher than the birth rate in Haiti, causing the population to decrease over time. They had to constantly import African slaves just to compensate for the decreasing population, because if they didn't, well, there just wouldn't be any more slaves around to work. Now let's head overseas and look at what France was doing. France was in the middle of the French Revolution, a revolution that really changed France in a lot of ways. One of such ways was the Declaration of the Rights of Man, which advocated equal rights for everybody, no matter the background. When word and rumors of this got to Haiti about a declaration that was advocating equal rights for everyone and nothing had changed in the colonies, well, what do you think will happen? The slaves were angry and they wanted to rebel. It did not take long for the slaves to realize that they severely outnumbered everybody else on the island and that they could potentially start a rebellion and even be successful. In August of 1791, the slaves decided to rebel, and within 10 days they took control over much of the northern part of the island. They severely outnumbered everybody else by a ratio of 10 to 1, so it was very easy for them to get new territory and even keep it. The slaves were full of anger and revenge. Revenge for being treated so horribly for so long in those sugar plantations that they killed, raped, mutilated every single white male that they found. By 1792, just 1 year later, they had taken control over half of the island. That's a lot. In 1793, just 1 year later, France made a very big mistake. They declared war on Great Britain, which of course invited them over to try to take the colony for themselves. France was now fighting a very difficult war against a slave rebellion that outnumbered them 10 to 1 against Great Britain and even Spain, who joined in to try to take a piece of the action for themselves. France knew that they were going to lose and they had to do something. France came up with a brilliant solution that really turned the tide of the war in their favor. They freed every single slave in Haiti in hopes that if you free the slaves, you take away any reason they have for fighting you, and they just may join your battle and fight off against your opponents. And that's exactly what happened, and it worked. Now, there was a great Haitian general, and if you've been watching this show for a long time, it seems like all we talk about are generals, but he did manage to turn the tide of the war twice because he eventually switched camps and fought for the other side. His name was Toussaint Louverture. He was a slave and he fought with the slaves for freedom and independence against France, up until the point that France decided to free every single slave, when he then joined France, fought against Great Britain and Spain to restore French rule over the colony. Now, why did he do this? Why switch camps in the middle of the war just to go fight for your opponents? Well, remember that at the time, France was under heavy changes because of the French Revolution. One of such changes was abolishing slavery. And Toussaint Louverture saw that as something worthy to fight for, and maybe, just maybe, if you fought with the French and restored French rule over the colony, you might live in peace without any slavery at all. For a few months after that, things looked really optimistic for the colony. It really looked like you could live in peace without worrying about slavery and just have a potential life to live happily ever after, until Napoleon came into power in France and destroyed everything. Napoleon, he didn't really care about slavery. He was more focused on the American continent and restoring the influence, power, and territory that France had there before they lost everything in the 7-Year War. And to do that, he needed money. And where do you think he went to get the money from? Well, you guessed it, he went to France's most profitable colony, Haiti. And what's the best way to get the most out of a colony? Well, you're bringing slaves, you don't have to pay them, and you can get the maximum profits with the least cost. That was Napoleon's plan. He sent a large fleet with his brother-in-law with secret orders to restore slavery to maximize the resources it can get from Haiti. The Haitians at first had no problem with the French being there. It wasn't until the French tried to take away their weapons that the Haitians did not like this and started a rebellion again, effectively starting the second phase of the Haitian Revolution, the fight for independence. After a few years of war, despite the fact that Napoleon was sending army after army that were better equipped and had better strategy than the Haitians still managed to win battle after battle. Why, would you ask? Well, the Haitians had one ally that the French did not. They had disease on their side. And not just any disease, but yellow fever. Yellow fever was very deadly to the French. Even though they had a bigger and better army, they still lost because of that disease. And eventually, because everybody was at war back at home in Europe with Napoleon and he was losing battle after battle, he had no choice but to take away his troops from Haiti to defend a weakened France, leaving the Haitians with nothing but a call for independence, and that's exactly what they did. They officially declared their independence, and some 20 years later, France was the first country to officially recognize Haiti as an independent nation, making this the first slave rebellion that managed to successfully abolish slavery and gain their independence. Alright, that was it for this week's episode of Vlogs of History. I really do hope you've enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please leave a like, share it to a friend, and subscribe to be notified when the next episode comes out. Remember, these episodes come out every single Monday, and if you've missed the previous one, there's obviously a link on your screen and in the description, so make sure to check it out. It's very interesting. As always, I'm your host, Darius Costin. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I will see you all next week.